In 2014, Tom Scott, yes, the YouTuber, theorized that in 2030, privacy will be dead. And given the current developments, given the fact that there's massive censorship, and given the fact that even sites like Wikipedia, which are, I would say, absolutely necessary, and one of the resources that under no circumstances should be censored, and B, should be restricted, is getting restricted, and well, not getting, more so is facing threats of having to get restricted. Wikipedia, like the Wikimedia company or group or whatever, they're trying to fight this as strongly as they can, because this also means that they would have to force all the volunteers who are working on each page, because this is completely community driven, on releasing their personal identification, personal information, which will open them to harassment, doxing, bullying, and all these things, because there is unfortunately a war going on against Wikipedia from far right wingers who are trying to harm Wikipedia for being one of the last bastions of what I would describe as mostly unbiased, or as unbiased as we can get, media. Because Wikipedia by nature is a website that tries to report on events as in a matter of fact way and not in a biased way, and I love it for that. Sometimes we do need a lack of bias completely, even if it's on my side. I don't, sometimes we need things to be said as they happen. XYZ happened, XYZ has occurred, so we stay grounded in reality. Tom Scott was talking about how the world has changed in the 16 years between 1998 and 2014, and how in the 16 years after, so 2014 to 2030, things will change just as much. And I believe so too. However, I feel like he's been mostly accurate, but also a bit inaccurate. It's kind of ironic that a year ago we would have thought that the death of the internet would have been from AI. And I still believe, or even less than a year ago, I was talking about a few months ago, because I was not expecting this to pass or go anywhere, or get as bad as it is now. See, hindsight is a bitch. And the thing is, AI is still a huge threat on the internet as we know it, and make no mistake. However, it feels like we're now dealing with a more imminent one, where not only is content being censored, but actively we are being forced into losing our what's it called, just our identity online, because now if ID is required for literally everything, I don't see this ending well, because just the whole point of this is pretty much the final nail in the coffin of combining your real life with your online life. You know how in the 2000s, in the 90s, even maybe in the early 2010s, in forums and all other spaces, we were thinking, hey, there's an online life and there's an IRL life, and they don't have to be connected. And as time went on, they became more and more connected. Now it feels like the trajectory that we're heading is that they're going to be one and the same. And since I tend to make a lot of worrisome prediction lately, because I predicted a lot of this, or expected it. I didn't expect it to be as bad, but I kind of felt this is going to be the future. I really felt like, those like Watch Mojo videos, they're like 10 insane conspiracy theories that turned out to be correct. That's how I feel. and I am calling myself insane. I do genuinely believe that there is probably something wrong with me, but I feel like truth is I don't think there's really such a thing as normality. There never was. I think we're all like a bit out there, to put it lightly. I think we're just out there in different ways. But I'm gonna make another prediction for a worst case scenario, one for the best case scenario. Best case scenario, companies eventually fuck off after the internet as a whole tries to make itself unmarketable. That doesn't mean all companies. I mean the worst of it, the ones that are trying to set this internet censorship over NSFW content and trying to change attitudes by force, by shifting the pendulum, like how Elon has been trying to change attitudes on Twitter by promoting far right wing content to every single person. If you try to make an account now, no cookies, no identifiable information, no nothing to connect you to an existing activity, you will get far right content shoved down your throat, or at least recommended. Maybe not 24/7, but you'll get, a picture of a puppy here, a selfie from a celebrity there, and there's a post that is congratulating the ICE raids on sending people to concentration camps. And that is pretty much the Twitter experience. They're trying to slowly shift public attitudes by just trying to slowly suggest them to, like, have you seen this? Oh, have you seen this? Oh, maybe check this out. Oh, it's important, and maybe you want to know. Oh, it's not your fault that all these bad things are happening. It's this and this and this group's fault, and it's trying to slowly plant the seeds in your head so that you end up like them. That is pretty much how propaganda and indoctrination is being made. But anyway, actually gonna talk about my concerning prediction. This has been something that has been attempted many times before in the UK especially, and I feel like the UK might be the place where this will happen. They will probably legally mandate it so that everyone has to use their legal name on every social media. There's not going to be any more Shadow Spider 0734 or whatever. I don't know, I just came up with this on the spot. It's going to be John Jacobs, Mike Stewart, and so on, because we're not going to be allowed to have anonymity. I feel like privacy and anonymity will be gone by 2030. And I will be completely honest, if I have I genuinely feel like what they're going to do, or what some defenders are going to say, is, well, doxing cannot happen if everyone gets doxed. Am I right? Ignoring the fact that, people can still get swatted, and, doxing makes it just worse because that means that someone can show up at XYZ person's door and pretty much do whatever. It pretty much just empowers the bully. But the UK will try to pass it off as protecting against violent speech, or something like about protecting people from getting harassed, because they think that if they have their real names out there, people are not gonna do what they do. And yeah, maybe some won't, but I feel like the people who are public enough, like J.K. Rowling is doing this under her whole name and face and harassing people. Do you think that there's not going to be people who are, radical enough to just not care? In fact, I feel like that would just encourage people to start behaving like that normally IRL. I feel like at the very least we have this separation of real life and online still, even if it's dwindling, even if it's falling apart, it's still existing. It still exists there. And I feel like if we were to remove that, that's not going to just, that's probably going to make some people stop behaving like that, but it's going to make a lot of people also just decide, well, might as well just do it IRL, huh? And it's also going to put a lot of people in very, very unsafe situations. Anything from queer people to even people who have to use a pseudonym, because guess what? Some people are persecuted politically and they have to use a pseudonym so they don't get sent to jail. And unfortunately, the rise of fascism in the US will probably mean that there's going to be more and more of those cases. Yes, in the US, not in Middle East, not in North Korea. It's going to be a thing in the US very, very soon. But that's what I feel might happen next. That they're going to try again to roll out that everyone uses their real names and reveals their location and everything at all times. And I will be completely honest, as someone who is very online, if that happens, I'm probably going to go off the grid completely. I'm not going to be online anymore. I will just disconnect. I will probably try to make backups of everything that I want to have access to offline. All my favorite videos and all my favorite channels, I can go back on and rewatch them. And I'll straight up just rely on buying DVDs, playing video games offline, and just not really giving a shit about the internet. Like, that is probably going to be the breaking point. I am already getting close to the breaking point where I'm already making plans and contingency strategies for what I want to do, how I want to, how do you say, I want to lower how much I use the internet, or at least make it a more smart use of my time. And honestly, if it really just gets to that point, I will straight up just say fuck it. I will probably just delete my online existence and I will just exist without an account. I don't know. I don't care. I straight up feel like the way the internet is heading right now is horrible. And it really makes me think, right? We, in the past, we would watch those, like, you know, futuristic cyberpunk kind of movies where humanity has to give their entire livelihoods to the overseer or whatever, you know, stuff like that, where you look at that and you're like, why are people complying? Why are people just so okay with pretty much just serving the overseer and not objecting against it? Why are people okay with pretty much getting screwed over by someone who does not act or work in their interest? And now you look at the world right now, where there is very loud protests against everything right now, and I believe that there should be. And if you can, please call all the people who are at fault, Visa, MasterCard, whatever, legislators, and try to make your voice known. Even if that might not change anything, we can change something. We don't know if it will 100% change anything, but at least it will show that we will not go down. We will not just take it and let them do whatever they want, because that's what they rely on. Because what they rely on, and this is the strategy of every single company that I've seen in recent times, they do something anti-consumer, something horrible, something stupid, something you cannot excuse, and something you know is done solely for profit and nothing else, right? And and they get backlash, right? They obviously get backlash. What they're relying on is that people will eventually get bored, people will eventually get tired, and eventually everyone's just gonna be like, okay, yeah, sure, whatever. And sure, some companies, go back and change their decisions. Like, I'm still surprised that Sony didn't close the PS3 store when that's what they wanted to do. They still pretty much made it very difficult and very inconvenient for you to buy things there. And the store is kind of dog shit, but they haven't shut it down, even though it's pretty much a wasteland at this point, and I wouldn't be surprised if they will. But I'm talking about the 360 here. The 360 marketplace was shut down. There was some backlash. I was at least like talking about it occasionally. But the problem is that eventually everyone was just like, well, okay, they can't keep it around forever. They can't provide alternatives either, so like whatever, we're just gonna accept it. And the problem is, I understand that they cannot keep that store forever because the architecture has been like very ancient, and there's not really much of a use in updating it. However, there could have been alternatives, there could have been workarounds, they could have integrated some aspects of it in the modern Xbox store. But whatever, the point is, don't rely on big companies to work in your favor, because what they rely on is that even if there's backlash, that it will eventually die down. If it doesn't die down, then maybe they will respond because they have no other option but to. For example, Unity, when they said that they're gonna add all those stupid fees and gonna make it pretty much difficult for any indie dev to make any money and probably even get in debt, they stayed quiet through a big chunk of the backlash. They only made a response after the backlash wouldn't subside and people stopped using Unity, and now Unity is, for all intents and purposes, dead. I haven't really heard of many people making their projects in Unity anymore, which is funny because in the 2010s, like the entire decade, Unity games were everywhere. Now nobody wants to touch it because of the anti-consumer moves, and I feel like this is pretty much the only way to make a change, by being disruptive. And sometimes even being disruptive doesn't do anything. I'm thinking about, unfortunately, and I'm not saying that you should stop or give up or whatever if you are boycotting, but the BDS boycott, it has hurt the market capital of a lot of those companies. But not all of them are going to stop. Some of them will, some of them have. For example, like, I remember a huge situation was with Ben and Jerry's, how years ago people would boycott them, and then they actively became vocally pro-Palestine. And I feel like that is a change we want to see and we should see more, but unfortunately we're not going to see it. And there's even, like, what sucks is that, like, some companies we straight up cannot boycott, and by that I mean we straight up cannot boycott Amazon or Google, because a lot of people are gonna be like, well, we're just not gonna use Chrome and I'm gonna switch to DuckDuckGo. Okay, but Google is more than Google Chrome and Google search engine. Google is Android. Google is a lot of web hosting. Google is so many services, and same goes with Amazon. It's not just the Amazon as a website. There's Amazon Workspaces, and if you combine the two, you pretty much would not be able to use a big chunk of every of modern devices made after maybe 2005, 2006. And maybe even in those cases, some of them you would have to specifically and strictly use offline. And in some of those cases, you straight up cannot. Windows 11, there is a trick to make a local account, but they're probably going to patch it out. They straight up don't let you finish the install if you don't connect to the internet. Modern Xbox consoles also have the same issue. I think modern consoles in general have this issue. Don't quote me on that. But I think that the same issue applies to PlayStation. I feel the only one might be Nintendo that still allows completely offline login. I may be wrong though. Either way, the point is, it really sucks that we're really going to the direction where really the only options are either we comply or we go off the grid, and that's the intention. Because again, back up until this point, there are multiple steps of anonymity or privacy. Like, there's nothing. There's ad block, which helps big time. Like, a lot of people don't understand how much of a useful tool ad block is, to the point where for me it is a non-negotiable. The only reason why I'm considering moving to Firefox in the first place is because Chrome is killing off Manifest 2. And then beyond that, there's something like VPNs or using something called a Pi-hole, which is something I want to look into also. Then there's also using a different email address for everything, and everything being super anonymized. And then there's people who are straight up so worried that it's pretty much taking a toll on their lives, and they're actively making sure that they cannot be identified. They only use devices at the library or whatever else. They use burner phones. Just a lot of things like that. And then there's people who have completely gone off the grid, and they pretty much just try to function like they used to some, I don't know, 30 years back or whatever. And is that possible? Theoretically, it's not impossible. The problem is that the world has become so reliant on the internet that it will pretty much turn you into a ghost. Even if you have IRL friends, you will become a bit of a ghost. For the sole purpose, especially if you're under the age of 45. I'm not even saying under the age of 30, under the age of 25. No. Under the age of 45. Like, if you're 60, yeah, I don't think there's going to be much of a loss. But if you're under the age of 45, well, if you're still at before the point where, you know, you start getting old and all that, well, you're still relatively young, you're kind of fucked. And especially the more you go back, like maybe 45s and 40-year-olds maybe might have some leeway. 30-year-olds, not at all. But 20 and under, they probably have minus leeway. Because I'm thinking about it this way: you have an IRL friend group, and that's cool. But you all want to have a group call, group chat, or whatever when you come home. If you're not going to be able to join that, you're instantly going to be erased from a lot of in-jokes, a lot of activities, and that's going to make things harder for you. It's unfortunate that the world has gone to this point. So what I'm trying to say is, keep being outspoken, keep speaking up for what's right, and please, for the love of God or goodness or whatever, I'm not really a religious person, but you do you. I'm not trying to blasphemize or whatever. For the love of anything that's good, please try to reorganize how you approach the internet, and realize that the internet is still ours, but there's a good chance it might not be ours for long. I'll see you.